Hey, good evening everybody. Sammy Thunder here. Welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody is having a great end to their weekend and preparing for the holidays this week. So, this video is directed towards really anybody that has curiosity about pre-war cards, in particular T206 cards, which I think are a great introduction to pre-war because of how widely available they are at shows. Every single show I go to, I always see at least one T206 card, and they're just it's such a cool set to have, or a cool set to build, even though it's really impossible to acquire the entire set for obvious reasons. But I think there's some sort of belief, maybe some concern that some people have about the price, especially when it comes to the Hall of Famers. But as you can probably tell from the description and the title of this video, if you have $200 in your budget, or around $200 in your budget, a little bit more or a little bit less, you are definitely within the possibility and the range of buying some really big named Hall of Famers. And while there's a ton of them that you can get in the grades, like in a 1, even though there's a lot of names, I picked out 5 big names that I think you guys will appreciate, especially again for those that are curious and want to explore a little bit. So I'm going to jump right in and we'll take a look at it. So the first player that I brought up, and I'm picking all portraits, which, if you don't know, portraits are a little bit more compared to some of the action shots that you have, the action cards like the throwing or the batting. The portraits seem to be a much more desirable card that collectors like to have because it's a profile shot of the player. And the first card I wanted to show off is Chief Bender. Now, Chief Bender, Hall of Famer, and a phenomenal player in his time, a highly regarded player in his time. And what a beautiful portrait of him here with the kind of a lime green background. And it's just a really beautiful looking card of his. And so when I looked at VCP, I was really referencing like Sweet Caporal and Piedmonts, which are some of the more common backs. And again, when you start looking at some of these grades, 2, 3, or 4, you're obviously going to be seeing increases in price. But to my delight, let's look at a 1-year time frame. You can see that trend line has been steady, roughly around the 100 to 200 range. Now, granted, there's not too many sales, maybe 1 or 2, 2 this year. Let's look at 3. So over the 3-year period, you could see a lot have been kind of flirting anywhere between as much as 216 and as little as 138 over the span of 3 years. So when I mentioned that you can definitely find a quality pre-war Hall of Famer, such as a big name like Chief Bender, this is definitely proofs in the pudding here. So if we look, the average is about really right at 200. And if we look at the most recent one, this is an auction on eBay from August. Let's look at the image. It's pretty, for getting, again, for a great intro card to pre-war, a big name Hall of Famer, if you want to get a great looking portrait in a PSA 1, this one went for $208.64. And for what it's worth, I think it's pretty good looking for a 1. There's some chipping, but that's to be expected with some of these lower grade cards. But I think for around $200, you're getting a quality player like Chief Bender, a great Hall of Fame player, and a portrait, again, which to a lot of collectors, I think they're a little bit more desirable and collectible. And so, pretty stellar. Let's look at the back. Maybe the back might have some issues, but let me move my, there we go. No, really. Back's pretty clean. So again, for this one went for $208.64 for roughly around $200, a little bit more, a little bit less. You could definitely find these out there. This one went for $185 in July. This one has some surface wrinkles, so as we all know, there's different types of ones out there with PSA. I'm sure if we look at SGC, they might fall around the same price, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. So, but you guys get my point on this. Is that this is roughly what people are expecting to pay for this caliber of a Hall of Famer. Let's go to the next player. I picked Fred Clark because Fred Clark, not only was he a great hitter for the Pirates, but he also managed a very successful Pirate team, obviously led by the great Honus Wagner. And this one again, a great shot, a very kind of a crimson red, and he's standing or presenting with the profile shot. Fred Clark, great Pittsburgh uniform, very, very beautiful looking card. And again, when we look at some of the price ranges, we're looking at ones, and if we look at a 3-year time frame, this card went for as much as $203 and fell under the $200 mark, especially up until a couple days ago, really, $125. So we're talking about a great Hall of Fame manager, a Hall of Fame player, contributed for his team. And on average, these go for about $142. So here's the one that went for $125. Granted, it only had one bid on it, but let's take a look anyway. That's pretty good. I'd be happy to have that for $125. I don't really mind the surface wrinkles. I know some people do, but again, I'm thinking really of people that are genuinely curious about T206 cards, want to know really how much they should be expecting to pay for some cards. Now, the one thing I will say is that just because this one is $125 doesn't make all other PSA 1 Fred Clarks $125. This is merely meant to be used as a resource to kind of get a feel for how much these cards go for. And you can see there's some that go for more, some that go for less. So let's take a look at the one that went for $157. So this one's a bit cleaner. There are some surface wrinkles, but this one came from COMC. Some paper loss there. But really, again, it's a very nice looking card for a 1. Here's the back. You pay a little bit extra, $157.40. Here's one that went a year ago, for $150. Yeah, so you see what I'm talking about. This card presents really well. Not as much staining on this one. The borders are very, very white, which I think some collectors might appreciate. That it's very clean looking. And on the back. So this is the second player. I think Fred Clark's a great name, a great player to add to a collection. Again, great hitter and a great manager. You can kind of see it for yourself here. This list kind of shows roughly what they're going for. And not bad for under $200. Let's look at the third player. This one, Eddie Collins. Very popular portrait card to have. 3,000 hit club. Eddie Collins is a highly regarded player amongst his peers as well as collectors alike. The portrait is, again, great shot of him here with the Philadelphia Athletics. Desirable card. I mean, any which way you look at it, Eddie Collins is a big name in this hobby. So let's take a look at what his ones have been going for. Look at a 3-year time frame. So Eddie Collins is a little bit more demanding in terms of spending, but I would say for the most part, you're looking roughly at between $100 and $200. Most of the 168, 135. This is in 2022. It went up a little bit, as much as $250, but then went back down. You could see some cards going for roughly $150 to $175 as most recent. So let's take a look at that 175, which was a best offer made. So this This one's a little bit more beat up than others, I'm sure. So for 175, I probably wouldn't do this one. But if the other ones are worse, then maybe so. Let's take a look at this one, 146.40. This one's not nearly as bad as the other one. Yeah, you guys can see it. I mean, surface wrinkles expected here on the corners. Some chipping, some surface condition issues, but again, you know, for an elite Hall of Famer like Eddie Collins, for 150, may not be that bad of a price. Let's look at the back as well. So this one's the Squeak Pearl back. It looks like the wrinkle goes through. Let's keep looking. I'm curious about the 250. So this was from the Greg Morris graded. And this one has a wrinkle across, but the registration and the centering is pretty good on this one as well. So much better surface condition than the others. But again, you guys can sort of see that, you know, on average about 190. But again, like I mentioned, PSA 1, or all the different types of cards that are PSA 1s are going to be different from one another, and thus the value of them, some will be lower, some will be higher, because some are not nearly as good condition as others. But for what it's worth, Eddie Collins, big name, under around $200, not a bad bet at all. Let's go to our fourth player. One of my favorites that fall into this range, and I was quite surprised, is Addie Joss. I love his story. Addie Joss had a short career, but he was in line for elite and absolute stardom. He had 160 plus wins in 8 or 9 years, pitched a perfect game, no hitters, really accomplished a whole lot in such a short span of time, and just an absolutely just incredibly great player and pitcher. So let's take a look at some of the prices that his go for. His average, let's take a look at the time span. So yeah, so over the 3 years, this one you'll have to probably roughly pay a little over 200, but back in 2022, this was going for over 300, 274 and down, but it stayed pretty steady. It's been staying pretty steady about anywhere, looks like between 133 and, you know, like 250, 248. So over the year, you're looking to pay roughly probably about 200, which is what the average states. So for the one that went for 132.55, yeah, this one is very much wrinkled across, surface wrinkles, but the registration is still there, and really not a bad card at all. This one's with SGC. Interesting. I thought I picked PSA. The back is paper loss, so I can see why this went for much less, 133. But if paper loss is not a big deal to you, then really the front is the most, to me, is the most important. The back is kind of secondary, but to each their own. It's interesting how they reported this in the PSA list, but no, it's fine. This one was a buy it now for $248, and this one probably went for more than it probably should have based on how others have gone, but somebody wanted this one. Let's look at another one for $222. Okay, so this one came from Heritage, and this one was from September. It's for $222, and I think, I mean, someone can correct me on this, but I think that price is after all fees have been implemented. And so if that's not the case, and they're not showing what the fees, like the fees included on this, then let me know. But for $222, it's not a bad card for Addie Joss for his portrait. The centering is really nice on this. I don't even mind the wrinkles nearly that much, the surface wrinkles across here, because it's from a distance you wouldn't really be able to tell, because this scan that they did is very close up on it. And the back is intact, so for $222, I think that's a nice price for a good card. We'll look at one more. REA for $216 back in March. Yeah, pretty similar. Some surface wrinkles towards the bottom, which I guess might be more preferred, so his face is not really hammered too much with the wrinkles. Let's look at the back. Again, pretty clean for a 1. $216. That's not a bad price. So another quality Hall of Fame pitcher with a great story and a great portrait card. I love the fact that portraits are in this range for PSA 1. They are definitely possible to get in a little above 200 or a little below 200. Let's look at our final 5th player. I picked Joe Tinker. I see a lot of these cards at shows. It's a great shot. The hairstyle is something else. Joe Tinker, famous for Tinkers to Evers to Chance, as we know. I know Joe Tinker and Johnny Evers did not get along. They've gotten into fistfights with each other. But they played together for so long. The story kind of creates this aura around all these guys. And Tinker became a Hall of Fame, was a Hall of Fame player. And let's take a look at some of his prices over a 3-year period. So at a time, they were going, this one went for $281. And then as most recent, I guess a 2-year span between a sale of PSA 1s, this one went for $156 and up to as most recent $198. So not that many sales on the Tinker, but let's take a look. This one came from Heritage for $198. And so this one has wrinkles vertically and horizontally across his eye there. That might bother some. It doesn't really bother me too much. If I were collecting Joe Tinker, it may not be that bad for $198. Again, for somebody who's looking to just start adding into their collection, you want to start small and work your way up a little bit. Not a bad card for $198. Let's look at the back. Pretty clean for a 1. It's not bad. So let's take a look at one that went in September. This was with REA. Yeah, this one's a little bit worse for $156. Paper loss there, but otherwise not terrible. I'm not going to say it's awful, but for under $200 for a classic Hall of Famer like Tinker, it's not terrible. And the back is, for a 1, is pretty clean. Let's see, one more. This one is from over 2 years ago. I'm curious, so this one went for over $130 more. This one's a little blurry, so you can't really get a good look at it, but there's some surface issues down there on the bottom. But otherwise, the card looks pretty clean. Let's take a look at the back. Yeah, it's some minor, some issues down here, but 281 back in 2022. I guess that kind of lines up at the height of the hobby at that point. Unfortunately, not too many sales. Let's switch over to SGC just because we want to see maybe there's some more sales there. And there's definitely been more sales here, it looks like. Let's take a look. Yes, a lot more. Love of the Game, $200, like really right at 204. What a bet. Yeah, see, that to me is much better than the others that I've seen so far. This one presents a lot nicer in my opinion. I do like this one a lot more. I don't even mind the surface wrinkles that much on the top left of the card. To me, as long as the face, the profile shot of him is well established. Even the paper loss on the back doesn't really mind. I don't really mind that too much. Let's look at one more. 255. This is from last year. Interesting. So this one has some issues up here and kind of all around, but still not bad. Not bad at all. So, okay, let's go back. So I hope, showing you these samples that exist, that it may, it kind of lessens any sort of, maybe not anxiety, but concerns that you have. Now, again, I preach this because I say, even though I showed you a card that went for $130 perhaps on here, it does not mean that all other ones are $130. I think this is common knowledge, but just in case it's not. But I do want to make it so that you know that there's some great Hall of Fame players out there in PSA 1s, SGC 1s that are within a good budget to be able to add to your collection. And I think there's definitely some premier Hall of Famers that you can definitely find at shows online. As you can see, these are all from either auction sites, eBay, however you find them, but they're out there. So I hope this video helps. I just wanted to present what's out there, some good T206 options of some great players. But hope you guys have a great start to your week. I will check in with you soon, and have a good holiday if I don't talk to you sooner. Take care, everybody.